then get this, they boiled the pieces. How sick is that? And it gets even sicker. According to some sources, the men actually used the same kitchen utensils to cook their dinner. They'd even used the same stirring spoon on both their dinner and the dead body parts. Now, if you're a fan of Hellokitty merchandise, this case will leave you completely traumatized. You'll never look at those adorable little kittens in the same way ever again. This is the horrifying story of a girl whose decapitated head was left inside a Hellokitty doll. But how did she get there? Let's find out. The case started in May 1999 when a distressed 14-year-old girl, only referred to as a Fong, walked into the police station in Hong Kong and told the cops that she was being haunted by a dead woman. The woman she saw was bound with electric wires and had blood all over her body. At first, the police didn't believe her and thought that she was on some illegal substances, especially since she'd had a history of being involved with shady people. But then the girl told them that she was actually involved in the murder and that she knew where the body was hidden. She explained that the ghost had been haunting her for weeks and it wouldn't stop until she confessed. Still skeptical, the police followed Afong to an apartment building in the Kowloon area of Hong Kong, and what they found would haunt them for a very long time. It didn't look like your usual crime scene. The apartment was full of Hellokitty memorabilia, from curtains to towels to sheets and silverware. There were also several Hellokitty stuffed dolls all over the house, but one doll in particular stood out. It was an oversized Hellokitty mermaid doll, and inside it was something so terrifying it would shake an entire nation and make this one of the most heinous crimes in Hong Kong's history. The police were completely horrified and couldn't believe that such brutality could be performed on another human being. In fact, one of the investigators would later say that he'd never seen such a cruel case in his 21 years in the police force. The victim in this case was a woman by the name of Fan Man-yee. From an early age, Fan's life had been full of misery. It started when her parents walked out on her as a baby. She grew up in a girls' orphanage where, as you know, is not a nice place for any child. At the age of 16, the orphanage felt that Fan was old enough to fend for herself and kicked her out. And with nowhere else to go and no skills to help her get a decent job, Fan found herself out in the streets doing whatever it took for her to survive. She developed an addiction to narcotics and turned to petty crimes and selling her body to pay for it. In May 1996, Fan met her husband when she was working at a dancer in a nightclub, and they soon got married and had a son for a little while. She actually felt a sense of belonging with a family to take care of, but with a husband who was also an addict, the relationship wasn't smooth sailing. Neighbors would hear them fighting all the time. By this time, Fan had also decided to put her life together for the sake of her son. She went out and got a job as a night hostess and even tried to control her narcotics addiction. And for a while, things seemed to be looking up for her, and even seemed to get her life back on track. But unfortunately, this wouldn't last. In 1997, Fan met a man by the name of Chan Man-lok, a 34-year-old pimp and narcotics dealer who became one of her regular customers. As a notorious dealer and leader of an organized crime ring, Man-lok was a dangerous man. But Fan's addiction couldn't let her see this, and so she got involved with this guy who also became a dealer. And since the money she was making at the club from selling herself was not enough to sustain her habits, one day, Fan did something that would cost her life. After one of their sessions, she took Man-lok's wallet and she stole $4,000 from him. Man-lok soon found out and demanded that she pay back everything that she had stolen, plus $10,000. Fan managed to raise the initial $4,000, but asked for more time to get the rest. However, Man-lok didn't want to wait and decided to do something really drastic. In March 1999, Man-lok sent out two of his goons, Leon Xingcha and Liang Wu-lin, to kidnap Fan and bring her to him. He would invite his friends and associates to the apartment to violate and use her any way they wanted, and they would pay him. However, after a few sessions, Man-lok decided that simply getting his money back wasn't enough. He wanted to punish Fan for her mistake and use her as an example to other girls who might want to steal from him. And that's when things really got horrifying. The three men took Fan to the third-floor apartment on Granville Road, where they tied her up with electrical wires and began to rape her. And to ensure that no one outside heard their screams, they used dirty rags as a gag and tortured her for weeks. Afong, who's 13 years old at the time and dating Man-lok, who's much older, would even visit the men and take part in torturing Fan. One time she found Man-lok hitting Fan in the head multiple times and she'd actually join in. She would later tell the police that she thought it was for fun. How messed up is that? Every day these monsters would come up with new ways to torture and abuse, including burning her flesh with plastic and candle wax. And when they were not torturing her, they would all hang out in a separate room playing video games, as if there wasn't a dying woman in the next room. This went on for a whole month, as Fan became weaker from all the torture that she was going through. It got to a point where she wouldn't stand or do anything because she was too weak, and they'd also burn the bottom of her feet. I think at this point her body had become numb from all of the torture and she no longer felt any pain. The men decided that she wasn't fun anymore since she wasn't reacting to the beatings as much. And one of them suggested that they tie her and leave her suspended in the air and use her as a human punching bag. So they tied up her wrists with electric cords and tied up the other end to the ceiling. They would leave her there for hours, sometimes overnight. Guys, I won't even go into some of the details about some of the things these men did to her because they're just despicable. April the 15th, 1999, the group decided to go out for dinner and left Man-yee locked up alone in the bathroom. When they came back several hours later, Fan had already died and her body had even started to ooze. And guys, you think they'd finally leave her alone, but they didn't. In fact, what they did next was really sick and twisted and has continued to shock a lot of people to this day. So, to cover up their crimes, they put her inside a bathtub and cut her into pieces with the saw. And then get this, they boiled the pieces. How sick is that? And it gets even sicker. According to some sources, the men actually used the same kitchen utensils to cook their dinner. They'd even used the same stirring spoon on both their dinner and the dead body parts. Once they were done boiling the remains, they threw them away with household garbage, but left the half-cooked head, which they stuffed inside the Hellokitty mermaid doll and sewed it in. I don't know about you guys, but it's really messed up. It gets worse. Manlock reportedly ordered his men to feed some of the remaining body parts to the dogs, and the internal organs were put in a plastic bag and stored in the fridge. So the police found all these things in the apartment, and the three men were soon arrested and taken into custody. During their trial, Fong testified against them, giving all the gory details of what took place in that apartment. However, the men denied the killing. They also pointed fingers at each other for torturing Fan while minimizing their own roles in the horrific abuse. The defense also tried to convince the jury that Fan may have died as a result of a meth overdose, and that they just chopped up her body because they were afraid of getting incriminated for her death. However, Fan's husband has testified that she had stopped using meth when she got pregnant with her son. Unfortunately, due to the state of Fan's remaining body parts, the police and medical examiners couldn't determine what actually killed her. Although there was no doubt that she had been tortured, they couldn't tell if that's what actually caused her death, and because of all of this, the jury refused to convict the men of first-degree murder, saying that there was no evidence to prove that the men intended to kill her. Instead, the men were found guilty of a lesser degree of manslaughter and were sentenced to life in prison with a possibility of parole in 20 years. While given the sentence, the judge said he had never seen such a cruel and heinous case. Never in Hong Kong in recent years has a court heard such cruelty, depravity, callousness, brutality, violence, and viciousness perpetrated by a human being on another human being. Court-appointed psychiatrists found that all three men suffered from psychosocial behavior disorders, which meant they had no emotions and were actually unremorseful for what they had done. As for the girl, Aeon, she was set free without any charges because she had brought so much evidence that the police wouldn't have got without her. But the story doesn't end there. In the months following this harrowing murder, several strange things started to happen around the building where this took place. In one case, a woman who hadn't heard about the murder rented a flat on the 4th floor of the building with one of her friends. Then she and her friend started experiencing some pretty strange things, such as feeling a ghostly touch while sleeping and hearing women crying at night in the next apartment, which was actually vacant. Some other residents reported seeing a female ghost while they were on the stairs of the building, and the staff of the hair salon, which was on the 1st and 2nd floor of the building, reported finding Hellokitty dolls in the morning after they locked up. When they looked at the CCTV footage, they found that the owner of the salon, who locked up at night, there was actually a shadow behind him while he was walking away. And because of those stories, nobody actually wanted to live in the building no more, and they all eventually moved out. And the building remained empty until it was demolished in 2012. Thanks for watching another episode of Crime Lab. Don't forget to subscribe. Take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you in the next one.